Well, where has this version of Marcus Stoinis been? It's absolutely been a while since we've seen him, but if you're an Aussie fan, he resurfaced at absolutely the right time. What a moment to actually show to the world just how good a power hitter you are. And I mean, to be fair, if you watch Marcus Stoinis play, you know he can donk a long ball, but my oh my, he was in another dimension in this particular match. So, of course, if you guys are just joining us, the breaking news update we have for you: Australia have powered to a 7-wicket win over Sri Lanka, and as things stand, there's slim chances of making it to the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup, which they are hosting, and also defending champions of are very much alive. But man, what a match that was! Especially the second innings, I think it ebbed and flowed to such a degree that I thought at one point Sri Lanka were sure shot favourites to actually go away with the 2 points. We'd actually be talking about Australia and their missed chance, and the fact that the defending champions are potentially knocked out this early. But my oh my, Marcus Stoinis had some other ideas. He absolutely took Wanindu Hasranga to the cleaners. After that, he took Mahesh Theekshana to the cleaners. It didn't really matter who was coming up in front of him. He was deciding to take all of them on. As things stand, though, I think this wouldn't have been as big a victory as maybe Australia would have been expecting. Maybe they thought that they could have gotten a bigger margin of victory. Why that's not the case, we're going to come to that in just a bit. But let's actually first talk about how it is the match unfolded. If you watch the first innings, it was a bit of a struggle for Sri Lanka batting. I don't think they had the best innings in that regard. You had Patum Nisanka, who made a comeback, score 40 runs, but it was off 45 balls. Beyond that, I think the best innings of the evening, if you're a Sri Lankan fan, was that of Charat Asalanka, who scored 38 of 25 balls. That was a good knock, but beyond that, again, Dhananjaya Silva, 26 of 23. So if you're looking at it, they didn't really have too many runs to play with. But the simple fact of the matter was that last over flourish that Sri Lanka got in their first innings, where they took 20 runs of Pat Cummins, that actually would have given them some confidence and momentum going into the break, thinking, yeah, you know what, this Australia side look vulnerable, they look susceptible to making mistakes at the worst time, so maybe, just maybe, we actually have this. As it turns out, they didn't, but at one point it did look like they had the match at least somewhere close to the bag, because you'd remember that after the first 5 or 6 overs, which Sri Lanka actually did give away a few runs here or there. And by the way, I think the one bowler who would have a lot to question himself on, Wanindu Hasranga, very forgettable day. We know for a fact he can be expensive sometimes, but it's normally forgiven because he's a wicket-taking option. Today, however, that didn't really happen. I mean, he didn't really get too many. He didn't get a single wicket, and he was absolutely taken to the cleaners by anyone and everyone who came up against him. So if you look at the match situation, after 6 overs, Australia was 33 for 1. Again, not the greatest of positions to be in, and there will be question marks, doubters, over David Warner's form. But I think it's also more important we talk about the other opener. We'll get to that in just a bit. But after the first 6 overs, they were only 33 for 1. Wanindu Hasaranga came into the attack for his first over, and it went for 15 runs. Mitch Marsh absolutely took a liking to him. 6, 4, 5 more runs beyond that. Then after that, Dhananjaya came back, and he did get rid of Mitchell Marsh. So that was the big plus of his over. But after that, Hasaranga's second over, again, Maxwell took a liking to him. It was very expensive. He, in fact, gave away 19 runs in his second over. And that was it. That was the halfway mark. Australia were 85 for 2 suddenly out of nowhere. 2 very expensive overs from Hasaranga absolutely changed the course of the game. However, after that came the point which, actually led to the ground, or the people in the Optus Stadium in Perth actually booing Aaron Finch towards the end. So Finch played out what was essentially a maiden over from Mahesh Theekshana, and it would have been a maiden over if not for one wide that was darted down leg. But beyond that, he played out 6 dot balls, and even after that, Lahiru Kamra came in with a very good over that only went for 2 runs. And then to make things worse, Glenn Maxwell ended up getting dismissed by Chamika Karunaratne. Very good catch, by the way, by the sub-fielder Ashan Bandara, who had actually dropped Maxwell off the previous ball. Took a very good catch of the boundary, very acrobatic, balanced well, but After that, what happened was Stoinis came in. Stoinis went into beast mode. He absolutely took a liking to Dasun Chanaka. He took on Wanindu Hasaranga. He took on Tikshana. And at the end, Australia have gotten the match done with 16.3 overs. That means they still have 3.3 overs to spare. So their net run rate will improve considerably. They're back in contention for the semi-finals. But their biggest issue that, they have would be the form of Aaron Finch. I mean, if you look at that scorecard, he scored third. He scored in essence, he was scoring at a strike rate of less than 100, which is really concerning. He scored at 31 runs of 42 balls. I mean, that's a strike rate of 73. That's great if you're playing the ODI World Cup, but this isn't the ODI World Cup, it's the T20 World Cup. And Finch's poor form was largely covered for last year due to the fact that both Warner and, in fact, Mitch Marsh were actually going all guns blazing in the last tournament. This time around, however, you've seen Marsh hasn't had a great start to the tournament, Warner hasn't had a great start to the tournament, and then, Finch's poor form got absolutely exposed. How do you play with 6 dot balls against Mahesh Tikshana? If you're not going to be scoring at 30, 40, 50, score at 110, 120, 73 strike rate. It's no surprise that the Perth Stadium was actually booing him there towards the end. And they wanted to see Stoinis in strike. By the way, Marcus Stoinis, salute. He scored 59 runs of 18 balls. That means he was scoring at a strike rate of over 300. You heard that right. Over 300. But if you're an Aussie fan, there's going to be a lot of concerns over the form of, Aaron Finch. And do they take at that point? And I remember hearing on commentary, by the way, one of the commentators was saying was that, what can the batsman do in such a situation? He's trying to hit, but it's just not coming off. To that, I have a very simple answer. Retire hurt. Or actually just retire out. Do what R. Ashwin did during the IPL this year. It's a legal ploy. It's not exactly something that goes against the spirit of the game or anything like that. If you can't hit the ball, just retire out and give someone else a chance. Imagine with the kind of gun form that Stoinis was going in. If he had a Tim David the other side who was also hitting in a similar way, they would have won the match in maybe 14, 15 overs. Net run rate would have been corrected even further. As things stand, however, there's a lot of concerns over Aaron Finch's form, and I think that's the biggest takeaway here. You can't possibly be having a captain who's performing that poorly, especially if that captain is also your top order batsman. And that is a major concern. I don't know what exactly is going to come off, what is going to happen before Australia's next game. Wouldn't really shock me if Finch took the decision to drop himself, maybe bring in someone like Cameron Green. I don't know, because at this point, I think Finch is a proud character, but he's also a realistic, practical fellow. I'm not really sure what exactly the situation is going on there. It was horrible batting. It was painful to watch him bat, especially when you know how destructive a batsman he can be. But they won't, in fact, how is it? I don't know how it is that Australia will be thinking about it right now. The good news, if you're an Australia fan, is that of course you're still alive in the tournament. So that is the good news. That if they had lost today, and believe you me, at one point it looked very likely. At that point, it would have been very problematic. The good news also, if you're an Aussie fan, is the net run rate has corrected significantly. You'd remember that they were at a run rate or negative net run rate of minus 4.450. Right now, it's only minus 1.555. So that's a much better net run rate. But again, imagine if Tim David had come out and Finch had, actually retired out. I think that would have been a good choice, but it didn't happen. And there's going to be a lot of talking points about this. What is happening with Finch's form? Anyway, I've been talking for a while and I realize I can see a few of your comments here. So I'm going to take a few of your comments. Let's see what exactly it is you're saying. Man, that is a lot of comments. Rookie Techie says that the Aussies are now back in contention for a top 2 spot, if not a top spot. That is spot on. Because I think now, as I said, the net run rate has corrected significantly. So they would very well be, fancying their chances of actually making the semis now once again. Akash Bhargava says that England vs Oz will be a knockout kind of situation. You're discounting New Zealand in that sense. And don't forget, I think even Sri Lanka, by no stretch of the imagination, a poor team. Unfortunately for them, they actually just ended up on the losing side here. But I don't necessarily agree with that. But it'll be an important match nevertheless, especially considering that in the T20I series preceding the World Cup, England absolutely had Australia's number. So I don't think they'd want to be facing off against this side too often. Mayank Thaplayal asked, how is it that the groups are decided in an ICC tournament? We always see teams like Sri Lanka or Australia was in a different group than that of India. That's a very good question. I will actually try and do some research on that and actually see if I can come up with some answers, Mayank. Thanks for the suggestion. I'll definitely keep that on board. And in fact, as Rookie Techie says that, the net run rate boost has actually put them back in contention. You are spot on, my friend. They have, in fact, now gotten back into contention. Hardeep Singh says that you have to feel for Sri Lanka. 4 bowlers are injured and they still gave a tough fight if you exclude those 3 overs from Hasaranga. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do feel bad for the Sri Lankans because it was just one very freak innings from Marcus Stoinis that actually kind of ruled them out of this game. Beyond that, like that over from Tikshana, which was essentially a maiden with a wide, and then the following over, it had actually absolutely pegged Australia back, and I think they would have struggled if not for Stoinis coming out and absolutely unleashing those fireworks. Let me just see if there's any more comments there which can be taken. Akash Bharwar says that retiring out was a good choice. Bringing Tim David would have destroyed SL. I wouldn't say would have, but potentially, I do think that I agree with you there that potentially it could have actually wrapped up the game a little quicker. It would have been very advantageous if you're Australia. Sanket Joshi is asking that my 2 teams from that group. Look, I had picked England and Australia as my 2 teams to watch. In fact, I had also said that they were favourites. But I'm going to stick with that. I think it'll be those 2 teams. Sorry if you're a New Zealand fan. But I still think England and Australia are the favourites to go through, at least as things stand. Love Rami says, I think Shane was supporting Australia today, yellow tea, but I think England should win against Australia. The yellow tea, well, sometimes I feel like wearing something nice and bright because it looks good on screen. So this is one of those days, hence the yellow tea. I wasn't actually supporting Oz. I was really hoping that Sri Lanka would win because I love seeing a good underdog story, but full credit to Australia for the way they played. Can't take that away from them. And I do agree. I think England would definitely fancy their chances against this Australia side, especially if they can get, a couple of early inroads. Saurav Goyal says that team with pace all-rounders in these conditions would go a long way. And Australia, to be fair, have a lot of all-rounders, not just pace all-rounders. Tim David, Marcus Stoinis, Glenn Maxwell. Mitch Marsh would have been one of those options if he could bowl, but right now, of course, he's only there as a pure batter. So they actually are packed with all-rounders, them in England, which is why I agree with your point entirely, and that's why I had also picked, a team, and that's why I had picked England and Australia, because they're all-rounders actually give them a major edge. Neha Kumari asks us, why is Green not included in the Australia team? Well, because he was actually playing as a replacement for Warner during the India series, and he wasn't actually originally even in the squad for the World Cup. He only came in as a reserve towards the end when Josh Ingles ended up getting injured. So that's the reason why he's in fact, in the squad right now. I don't think he'll be part of the team because he was a Finch replacement, but won't really shock me if he gets to start sooner rather than later. Cricket analysis by RV says that players like Stoinis, Neesham and New Zealand turn their switches on when playing in the World Cup, unlike Rohit Rahul. I'll leave the Rohit Rahul one to the side, but I do agree that players like Stoinis, Neesham, and in fact the entire New Zealand squad, they just flip a switch when they're playing World Cups or ICC tournaments. They just seem to find that other gear. Let's see. Do we have any more comments? Ankit Srivastav says that Hasaranga was destroyed by Maxwell and Stoinis. And actually, I think this is one interesting talking point, was that Hasaranga, even during the Asia Cup which Sri Lanka won, wasn't in that great form. He had his good days, sure, but there were days when he'd get tonked and he would actually kind of make up for it with his batting. Here today that didn't happen. His batting was nothing to write home about, and his bowling, well, less said about it the better. I think he was the difference maker for the Sri Lankan team, and for like 50 odd runs in his 3 overs, only 3 overs. Ayush Bansal said that Green should replace Marsh. Oh, that would be very harsh on Marsh. I didn't realize that would rhyme, but still. But because Marsh is actually one of their best batsmen in this format. And remember, he was very key to them winning it last year. So, in fact, I think you want to stick with him because there's only been 1 or 2 bad games, because he's a class act. I would stick with him. But I think Green should replace Aaron Finch at the top of the order. Another advantage, by the way, with Green, gives you some good medium pace as well. Yet another all-round option. Saurav Goyal, thank you very much for the love. We enjoy doing what it is that we do. That's why we're bringing you all of these updates and, having discussions with you guys. We enjoy having these discussions. And yes, Pakistan do lack a genuine pace all-rounder. That's a very good point. Cricket analysis by Arvi says that will Yuzi get a chance tomorrow and will Pandya be rested? It's possible. I mean, if it were up to me, I would be playing the same team through the World Cup because I think now's the time to be playing with your core. But considering the way the Indian team management operates, wouldn't shock me if you saw a few rotations. Pandya resting would be one of them because I think they want to wrap him in cotton wool. Very key player for India, and I think Yuzi, if you want to get him back into form, no better place to start than with a team like the Netherlands. Hardeep Singh says that India should go with extra fast bowler in Perth against SA. I get that argument, I really do, but the problem is that then you'd be compromising your batting depth. And one of the reasons I rate teams like Australia and England so highly is because they have a lot of batting depth through having multiple all-rounders. India sadly don't have another pace bowling all-rounder who can step in. So I wouldn't compromise the batting for, another pacer. I don't think that would do that. So Kalp Jain, no, I actually wasn't off today. I was actually done with my work shift. I came back here, match finished. I joined you guys from my phone. Neha Kumari is asking, why is that Maxwell is getting so many, why is it that Maxwell is getting so many chances besides the form he's in currently? Because the thing with him is how exactly he's going to play. But he is a valuable option, not just even if his batting is poor, he bowls a few overs, very, very good fielder. And the day he clicks, he's a match winner. I think that would be the only reason. Thanks, Saurav. Cricket analysis by Arvi says Shardul should have been in for Perth-like pitches. I think the problem with Shardul is in white ball cricket anyways, that he can be on the expensive side, especially in T20 cricket. Kalp Jain, I've been taking a lot of questions. If I missed any of yours, I'm very, very sorry. Let me just go up there. I answered your question if you asked me that I was off, and I wasn't. I was actually in work today, and I came back home, but the match finished here, so I thought I'd join you guys. Anyway, I think, I'll sum up this video here for you now, guys. Australia keep their chances of making the semi-finals alive. And again, if you remember, last year as well, they weren't that fancy. This year, I think they are actually one of the fancied sides. So now they're staying alive. Sri Lanka, though, it would be a bit of a gut-wrenching loss, especially considering the positions they were in at one point. But I think they'll come back stronger. I think you'll see some good cricket going forward from them in the future. All in all, very good match, especially considering today this was the only match that was, in fact, taking place. So thank you guys all so much for joining us. If you enjoy what it is that we do, please don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. Then you can go ahead and also download the SportsTech app. You can get some good coverage of the World Cup there. Thank you all so much for joining us and joining me in particular. As always, take care and goodbye.